Hey, it's so nice to meet you here at the PM72. My name is Jen and I'm the head of marketing at Jexo, organizers of the PM72 and also makers of plugins for Jira to help teams prioritize and manage work better. So before we begin, let me tell you a bit about myself. I started my career 6 years ago as a copywriter for advertising agencies, and I quickly moved into media buying and growth marketing. If you are not a marketing expert, don't worry, this session is not about any of that. What this session is about is how to make risk assessment fun. I'm going to introduce you the Hopes and Fears Toolkit, a simple workshop that helps make risk assessment with your team more fun. But first, let me share a bit about my team and why this has worked for us. For the past year, I've been leading a high-performing creative team here at Jexo. If you haven't heard, we are a team of 5 and we managed to grow our apps, create a PM72, grow a YouTube channel, and a blog that gets around 100 impressions. That's quite a lot for a team of 5, and a couple of months ago, we were only a team of 3. So from my experience, working with a creative team, it's often difficult to get everyone excited about planning and organizing our projects, because creative people love the brainstorming stage. But thinking about risk and doing risk assessment before starting the actual project doesn't sound very creative. So my team often says you can't structure creative processes, which is true to a certain point. The Hopes and Fears workshop makes the risk assessment process feel so much like brainstorming that my team never even noticed. They switch from being brainstormers to risk managers, even if it's just for one brief moment. So, if you are starting a new project, a sprint, iteration, or anything that's just about to begin, you should stay to the end of this talk because I'll show you how to make risk management for teams or even for yourself less boring through a simple workshop. I'm also going to explain the risk assessment process we did when planning for PM72. So stay with me for the next 15 minutes. After running the Hopes and Fears workshop, my team has been able to identify risks because it feels more natural to them than the process we used before. I really hope this helps you introduce risk assessment to your team. I know how much stress can be involved when trying new things at work, so I want to make it easy for you. But before we start, let's do a quick recap on what risk management is. Risk management is defined as the process of identifying, monitoring, and managing potential risk in order to minimize negative impact. Risk is something we all face in our lives, whether it's for personal or professional projects. And the key to managing risk is understanding when, where, and how they could appear. So let me introduce you to the easiest way to identify risks. The Hopes and Fears Toolkit from IBM, which you can find here. This toolkit was designed to make your team come together as one and reflect on the concerns and goals they might have as a team. This also highlights potential risk and share ideas of what success looks like. Many projects fail not only because of a lack of planning, but also because many of us forget to plan for what needs to happen if plan A fails. You can get ahead of this just by running a simple risk assessment session before your project actually starts. This way you can proactively identify and fix things that could potentially go wrong and create a mitigation plan up front. So let's begin by explaining what hopes and fears are. Hopes are your team's expectations about what can be accomplished when starting a new project. For creative teams, this could be a successful viral campaign. The fears reveal hesitations your team might have about working or investing their time in a new project. For example, running out of budget or not achieving the expected growth rate and so on. Now that we clear that, let's start with how you need to run this workshop. First, you have to set a duration. Depending on how big your team is, anywhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour should be enough. Sometimes the best ideas come out of nowhere, but more than usual, they show up very diffuse, so take a seat with your team for 10 minutes to just let things bubble up from below if they need to. Make sure to have a bunch of sticky notes for you and the team. Or you can use tools like Whiteboard, Miro, and Confluence. You're going to use the sticky notes to write down ideas and leave them on the paper before discussing them together. This way you have more time to elaborate and think through the ideas before discussing them. If you are in charge of running the session, remember to make the environment friendly and welcoming. Before your session begins, remind everyone what the main goal of the project is. This way, everyone will be clear on what you as a team are trying to achieve and why. If you don't communicate the goal of the project firsthand, then you are setting up yourself for an hour of random ideas with no direction. So make sure to communicate. When you know how to run a successful session, it's time for the tools. You are going to need a whiteboard or a blank page. When you have your whiteboard, pull out some sticky notes. Okay, so take your page or whiteboard and draw a vertical line just at the center to divide into two sections. One is going to be called hopes and the other one fears. Now, let your team explore their ideas. You can start your sticky notes with phrases like I hope, I'm concerned that, and so on. Now that you have all ideas into the sticky notes, the next step is to cluster ideas. Discuss the sticky notes as a team and cluster ideas into common themes. Circle them and add a title to your cluster. For example, themes could be named workflows, alignment, constraints, and so on. You have your clusters. The next step is to choose one person from your team to present the fears and another person to present the hopes. If one sticky note requires more context, ask the owner of that idea to elaborate a bit more. Allow team members to discuss fears with each other and find the root cause. Also, discuss the likelihood of such fear happening and try to provide solutions. When all fears have been surpassed, remove them. And if any of the fears seems to be stuck on there for too long, take the time to address them with your team. The risk assessment process doesn't end when the workshop ends. After your team gave you all their insights, you still need to plot the risk in a risk matrix and assess the level of each risk, how serious they are, and which ones you should focus on fixing and mitigating first. So if you're looking for a tool that will help you with this part of logging, calculating scores, and managing your risk in Jira, you can check out our newest app, Hedge. With Hedge, you can score your risk using risk factors and allows you to create risk management reports, including risk matrix. During planning and brainstorming for PM72, some of the fears my team had were not getting enough attendees and not reaching a good number of the speakers. And so for each of these fears, we wanted a discussion to identify why and how each of them could happen. We did all of this in Miro and went back to the planning every week to adjust based on hopes that had been achieved and fears that persisted. One fear that persisted long was not getting enough attendees, so another brainstorming session with the team, where we went over all the efforts and tasks we were working on to promote the event. We found new opportunities we had overlooked. So this is why coming back to your whiteboard is important, because even if you are the best at planning, situations can change, and you have to be on top of that at all times. Now let's do a quick recap of everything we've learned. Step 1. Brainstorm hopes and fears with your team on a whiteboard. Step 2. Discuss the hopes and fears everyone has and find solutions for each of them. Step 3. Plot your risks in a risk matrix using apps like Hedge for Jira. Step 4. Plan your project properly. I recommend using the app Swanly for Jira roadmaps as it gives you high visibility of what everyone is working on, but feel free to plan however you like. As you can see, the hopes and fears toolkit is extremely easy to run with your team. All you need is a whiteboard and lots of ideas. And trust me, your team has more than enough hopes and fears when starting a new project to make this workshop worth your time. Thanks for staying with me till the end. If you want to learn more about Jexa's work management plugins for Jira, see you around and keep having fun at PM72.